What's up, Prinston? Coming to you from Centerverse, and in this video, we're going to teach you how to become an elite level player in whatever field or industry you're in. Now, this video is not for people who want average level success. This is for people who want to make piles of cash, they want to build mountains of influence, and they want to be the person who leads their industry or field. So what I'm going to do in this video is give you six things going to help you build that. Things that I've learned over the years that have helped me get to higher and higher levels. One, I'm going to talk about nuanced thinking. Two, I'm going to talk about sustained focus. 3, I'm going to talk about defying social conventions. 4, I'm going to talk about self-imposed urgency. 5, I'm going to talk about overcoming fear. And 6, I'm going to talk about launching, getting started. Let's get right into it. So first of all, if you want to be elite, you're going to have to think a little bit differently than the people around you. And the ideas that I propose in this video might be a little outside of what you've been traditionally told it takes to be successful. So the first topic I want to start off with is nuanced thinking. So I remember my first business partner, we used to get into these epic debates. I mean, these things would last 6 hours. And I'd never seen anybody who could kind of joust with me intellectually like this. Now, the crazy thing, after these six hours, back and forth, this point, this breakdown, this debate, this proof, this science, or whatever, we'd always come to the conclusions that, in essence, we both were correct. Now, you might say, that's impossible. There's no way both of you could be right. And I would say that's where you have to understand the difference between nuanced thinking. There's a book called The Self-Made Billionaire Effect, and in there he said an intelligent person, or the mark of an intelligent person, is the ability to hold two seemingly conflicting ideas in their head at the same time and not feel any discomfort. So what I'm going to talk about right now is a little bit more nuanced point, but all billionaires, all people at high levels, they're able to form this nuanced thinking in their brain. So what am I talking about? A lot of times when you look at any situation, you think of it as black or white. It's either this or that. And one thing that I often see in entrepreneurship and business is that people always want to apply one technique across the board. So they learn one technique, they go on the internet, they read one blog post, and they say, well, I got this technique, and now I'm going to try to apply it to absolutely everything. But one thing they miss is context. One thing that might work in one situation doesn't work in another situation. There's a great book called Breakthrough Advertising. One of the greatest books on advertising you ever find. This thing sells for like $600 on Amazon right now. And one thing he talked about is marketing situations require different levels of thinking. Or basically a different situation requires a different marketing solution. So you may look at Coca-Cola and say, man, look how Coca-Cola markets. But you're not Coca-Cola. So you can't market like Coca-Cola. You have to do something different based on how much awareness there is of you, how much people know about you, and how much the market itself is used to the product. So the first thing you have to understand when it comes to anything is nuanced thinking. There's a lot of reasons that entrepreneurship topics are not mainstream. It's because the thinking is too nuanced. There's things that don't work in certain contexts. There's no simple solution that tells you this is what you do every single time. This is how it goes every single time. When you make nuanced points, a lot of times what you'll see, whenever you make a nuanced point, whenever you say, well, you know, it's not like that all the time, you'll see people, oh, so you don't know what you're talking about, because the point is nuanced. I've often argued with people all the time when people say, well, you said this in one video, or you said this one time, but you said something different here, because what they're missing is context. This point I'm talking about right now is a little bit more nuanced, but it's important because if you can't look at the situation as it is, the nuance of how it could be different in one situation and another situation, then you'll never be an elite level player. You'll be just like everybody else who has black or white thinking, that it's this or that. Learn to think in nuance. It's very important as an entrepreneur. So I'm reading this book lately. It's called Deep Work, and it talks about going really deep on your work. And it got me thinking about why most people can't be successful is because they don't understand the second thing, which is sustained focus. The ability to put your mind on a task for an extended period of time without distraction. I remember my favorite book, Iron Will, they talked about this. They said that a person with an iron will has to understand, well, until the person has trained their will to understand how to fix on one topic to the exclusion of everything else, they'll never be truly successful. And in Deep Work, he talks about something similar. I learned this concept very clearly myself when for 1 year, and this is a true story, I was a complete hermit. I was just outside society. I actually had like 2 friends that I talked to, and that one of them was a family member, and I didn't talk to anybody else. All I did was sit and study, work, study, work, study, work. But over that sustained period of time, some of my best ideas came, some of my best inspirations. Now, before that, I had done like 6 years of business, but in this time, when I cut off everything else, this is when I found the most inspiration, which ultimately led to me creating the Massive Action Movement Show. So what does he say in Deep Work, why this is important? Well, the thing about sustained focus, which is different from what they call shallow work, or the shallows is what they have an excellent book about that called The Shallows, is that these superficial layers of work, they distract us from getting to the deeper layer of work when our mind really starts to kick in. So let me give you an example of this. Basically like this. If you start doing some work and somebody emails you in the first 5 minutes, you never get a chance to actually get into the work. And then you start back working again. But it takes time to switch between the two tasks. It's been researched that our minds have this cognitive switching where it takes us time to really switch from task to task. So now if you're looking at social media, every post, every time somebody calls you, then what happens? Your mind never really gets time to focus on the task. Now, at about 25 minutes in, about an hour in, that's when the work really starts getting good. That's when you really start focusing on your work. But anybody who's been great, whether it's been great scientists, whether it's been great artists, they've had the ability to provide this sustained focus, to go shut themselves off and produce some great work. Now, there may be the exceptions to that, but most people who've created great work have been able to give sustained focus. I want to give another example of what I do, something practically that you can do or develop this, and something that I do every day, which is using something like Clear Focus. Now, Clear Focus is an app where it turns off everything that's distracting, whether it's social media, internet, and sometimes people try to reach me the other day, it's not possible to reach me because, well, shit, I'm working. Now, I talked about this before in, I think it was the 4th video of last season of the Massive Action Movement Show. I talked about, things like conditional decision making, people getting in your way because, you're trying to work and then people are trying to distract you, time thief callers. I talked about all these concepts. So if you want to go check that out, go check out that video. But this is something you can do and something you have to understand, that if you want to play at the elite level, this is not a negotiable topic. You can't be like, well, I'm going to try to put a little bit of work here, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. You're never getting to the level of work that's going to produce that true inspiration, that true work, that masterpiece, that thing that's going to really set you apart because you're not sustaining your focus. The next thing I'm going to talk about is defying social conventions. If I had to say one thing that's more important than everything else on this list, well, maybe not more important, but it is one of the most important things, is the ability to defy social conventions. Right now, sitting there, watching this video, most people, and probably you're stuck in social conventions. What do I mean by that? I made a couple videos about this. I made one video about social conditioning. I made another video, the first video we actually did on the Massive Action Movement Show, it was about your identity and why you must escape what you believe your identity is. But I was reading a book, it's called How to Be a Billionaire, and it talked about this at the beginning. It said all the famous billionaires, one thing that they were able to do is defy social conventions. And what do I mean by that? A social convention is something that you've grown up, you've been conditioned to believe that it's true over the course of your life. Now, one thing that I talk about all the time, and people told me all the time when I was young, that, of course, being black, that it was going to be harder for me to succeed. Now, a lot of people hear me say that. Maybe people get a little bit testy about that, and they would say, oh, shit, you probably shouldn't talk about that. But I'm going to talk about it because that's exactly the point, of social conventions. Now, why do I talk about this? Now, of course, there's obvious things, and I'll put the disclaimer, there's obvious things. Of course, there's hatred, there's racism, there's all these type of things that exist. This is obviously true. But I want to talk about something that really struck me when somebody told me this idea. Now, if I had believed that social convention, I just would have said, you know what, I'm going to go into the job, I'm going to the corporate world, and that's what it's going to be for me. And it's going to be difficult. Yeah, of course it's going to be fucking difficult. Why? Because my race is going to be difficult, right? But when I dropped out and I started being an entrepreneur, I noticed that my entire world shifted. Why? Because first, I had defied a social convention that college was the only way to be successful. One that I've been growing up or groomed my entire life to believe. And then second, that I realized that when you're an entrepreneur, nothing really stops you from just getting up and doing shit. Like right now, one day, I literally was sleeping on the floor. The next day, I'm making videos, I'm putting content out, and I'm going to find clients and people to buy my work or buy the stuff I put out there. What does that have to do with any type of social convention? What does that have to do with race or anything? I'll give you another example. I got a friend of mine. He's running a 6-figure e-commerce business right now. Nobody gives a shit when they click on a link who's selling the product. If you went and bought a case or something online, do you give a shit? Are you sitting there saying, who's selling this? Now, to be clear, I remember talking to my uncle a long time ago before he passed. And I was telling them, I don't think that hatred or anything like that is ever going to leave. That's just a part of human nature. There's always going to be hate. There's always going to be people trying to diminish people. And if you're going the traditional route, if you're going up the corporate ladder, yeah, there's ways to be minimalized. Of course, women have inequality. Of course, there's racial inequality. There's all these type of things. However, nobody gives a shit. Because let me tell you something. If I had sat there and I believed that shit, I still would have been stuck hating my life, doing shit I hate for the rest of my life. One thing I told my uncle was, I don't believe, once again, going back to what I just said, that hatred's going anywhere. But I do believe I understand the time that I'm living in. And I'm going to use the tools that I have right now to reach the level of success I want. I can sit around and focus on all the things that aren't, or I can focus on what I can do. I can not make excuses for what I'm doing. I can defy the social conventions that are blocking me and take fucking action to make things happen. Another thing I want to cite really quickly, I was talking to somebody else. She had just finished law school. She was getting ready to take the bar. She said that she didn't want to be a lawyer. She hated it. But the first thing she said, the first thing that came to her mind was, like, you know, my parents might be disappointed. My father may be disappointed. My mother may be disappointed. And I'll tell you something, and this is something near and dear to my heart because it's something I had to overcome. We'll spend the rest of our lives, living in mediocre lives, piece of shit existence, because we don't want to let somebody down, because we don't want to let our mother down, because we don't want to let our father down, because we don't want to let our friend down. And if you realize that the only way to be truly successful, be elite, to not be a motherfucker sitting around doing what everybody else is doing, you're going to have to defy social conventions. So this brings me to the fourth thing we're going to talk about, and that's self-imposed urgency. And that means you need to put some fire under your ass. Now, this is something very near and dear to me too, because I remember where I was at in life, this became one of the topics that really hit home for me. After 6 years of entrepreneurship and things not really going my way, I kind of fell into the status quo, if you will. Now, the first time I'd ever faced any real difficulty in my life was when my grandmother passed, and that kind of changed me essentially. Now, before I get to this next part, I know what it's like to be kicked out on your ass. After my grandmother passed, things weren't cushy anymore. I mean, cars got repossessed, we got put out on the street, and we tried to, after that, find some semblance of a life. My mother got an apartment and we eventually got together. Now, it didn't make it any better that I dropped out of school, but for 6 years I was challenging myself, putting urgency on myself. But when things didn't go my way, I started to get comfortable. And this brings me to why it's important to create self-imposed urgency. When I got comfortable, who was gonna put any pressure on me? Who was gonna make me do shit? And most people right now, if you have something that's forcing you to work, if you got something in your life that's forcing you to push through, you should consider yourself lucky, because most people aren't doing shit because they don't have anything that's motivating them to push through those barriers. I mean, look, my mother, she loved me. And like most people in the millennial generation, their parents have probably been through some rough shit through the times they went through. So they don't want to make their child work. They don't want to make their child do anything. They just want to make sure they're safe. And that's probably pretty much what would happen to me. Like I was good. I was in a position where everything was good. Things were getting paid for. And I was just like, yeah, well, I'm doing my business thing. I'm out here. I'm studying. I'm researching. I'm putting in the hours each day. But I wasn't doing the scary things because I didn't have that self-imposed urgency. So what did I end up having to do? The first thing I went and did was I told my mother that I wasn't going to take any more support from her. Now, this is a key distinction. I didn't have to do this. I did this myself. Now, I was sleeping on the floor in the back room of my mother's house, and she still was going to, make sure I was good and all this type of stuff. But it was up to me to impose that urgency on myself. So I went to her, I looked at her, and I said, I'm not going to accept any more help. That means no paying for phone bills, insurance, anything like that. I'm going to do everything my fucking self. Now, what did this lead to? Of course, I lost my phone, I lost my insurance, I lost all these things, these superficial things I thought I needed. However, it forced me to take action. There's this great book that I love called The Moral Animal. It talks about businesses as organisms. Now, one thing it says in here is that an organism, when it first starts off, it's very fragile, very weak, easy to destroy. But as the organism goes through all kind of environmental stresses, which means things try to harm it, things try to kill it, and it survives, each iteration it survives, it becomes stronger. So same thing like with a business. Let's think about Walmart. When Walmart first started, Kmart could have came in and smashed Walmart if they would have immediately went to Walmart where Walmart was at. But it's because they didn't, Walmart eventually grew to a powerhouse that swallowed Kmart alive. And it's the same thing when it comes to a self-imposed urgency. In order for you to become strong, you have to have these environmental stresses put on you. But the thing most people have, things are so cushy. Right now in the world, things are easy. Most stuff's gonna get by. Most people are not gonna be homeless. I mean, unless you have no family members or you're a complete fucking asshole, you're probably not gonna be homeless. And nobody's gonna really make you work. They're gonna complain about you when you leave, say that motherfucker needs to get a job. However, nobody's going to make you work. And this is why it became so important to put that self-imposed urgency on myself. When I did that, that's when I had the dream. That's when when I woke up and I finally said, this is what I have to do. This is the direction I have to go. I had that sense of urgency. That's where the massive action moves came from. That's where all the major strides in my business came from, because I impose urgency on myself. When I get too comfortable, I put myself in the fire. And this is what I'm talking about when I say playing at an elite level. This is something nobody's gonna tell you. If things are comfortable, if you got the job and all this type of stuff, but you fucking hate it, this means you're still gonna have to take more action if you wanna get to the level you wanna be. And this is why self-imposed urgency is the fourth factor you need if you wanna become elite. Now the next one, often talked about, the fifth thing, overcoming fear. Now, that may sound simplistic on the surface. You just need to overcome fear. You need to get out there and you just need to take action in order to make yourself successful. Right? But what happens? Why are so many people scared shitless of doing the thing they really want to do? One of the things I talked about before is defying social conventions. Because when you step outside the box, nobody's gonna help you. Trust me, nobody's gonna be sitting there encouraging you to, oh yeah, you know, just go in there and risk everything. Risk it all. Take risks, just go out there, throw caution to the wind. But what most people are really in fear of is not just the fear, but the uncertainty, because they don't know what's going to happen. They want certainty. Now look, there's these things called cognitive biases, and one of them is the pain avoidance tendency. Freud also said this. He said that all human beings, we have a pain avoidance tendency, which means we want to move towards pleasure and away from pain. Towards pleasure, away from pain. So what does that truly mean when it comes to fear? We're not designed to try to do the most scary things or the things that are gonna push us the most. We're designed to maximize comfort. I'm gonna say that again, maximize comfort. Similar to the last thing I talked about, putting urgency on yourself, you just wanna be comfortable. And who doesn't? Everybody wants to be comfortable. Right now, we come out here and we put ourselves under strenuous social conditions in order to film these videos for you. So what does that mean? Like, people will walk by, people are saying stuff, people are shouting on the side. Sometimes people are trying to stop us from filming. All these things happen while we're out here. And of course, when you're filming out here, you come to a strange location, you're thinking to yourself, what if they stop us? What if they say something? What if something happens? All these fears would keep us from actually doing something. Now I want to talk about something else with fears. Most fears are not actually realized. I was watching this video on YouTube and it was a lady called Mel Robbins. She said that it's called the spotlight effect. So the spotlight effect is our ability, or not ability, it's a thing that your brain does where it magnifies risk in order to make you not do something. It's a way of protecting you because, of course, the way we've evolved, if you used to get into risk, you could possibly die. But the world we're living in right now, you're probably not going to die. So the biggest thing we have to understand when it comes to fear and uncertainty is that this is one of the prime reasons that most people don't do anything. They want that certainty. Now, like I said before in this video, this is not for people who want average levels of success. This is for somebody who wants to play at the elite level. The elite players, they're not looking for certainty. They're not looking for things to be exactly how you picture it. There's a lot of things that we've done. There's a lot of events that we've done. There's a lot of projects that we've done. We didn't know if they were going to succeed. But what we did know is that we're going to continue forward no matter what. We weren't going to let fear stop us. So how can we stop fear? How can we push our limits? And the one thing I can tell you about that can help you with this, and one thing that I use is just exposure. Now think about it like this. Anytime you expose yourself to something over and over and over again, it becomes easier. When I first started shooting videos, and I even maybe put a clip on here or something like that, it took forever. When Will first came out here with me and shot a video, he just wasn't the best on camera. But you see him now, he's all over the place, he's very confident, he's dominant, he speaks on the camera in a way that's convincing. It's very well done. However, it didn't start like that. To come out to an environment like this and actually film where people are watching you, judging you, saying, hey, what is he talking about? Thinking that people care about you that much, and I can guarantee you that's your own narcissism. Thinking that people give a shit what you're talking about. Most people, even when we're cursing or we're saying something loud, they just kind of look and they go on about their business. But to do that, over and over again, it becomes nothing. Had a video where we shot when the Super Bowl was out here, where we're just in the middle of the crowd, we're talking, people are sitting around watching us, observing us like we're putting on some type of show or spectacle. But we were able to do that not because we have superpowers or we're magical, because we constantly exposed ourselves to situations that caused us to push our comfort zone. And one good thing about this is you don't have to expose yourself to the most scariest situation ever. One thing I did to myself, like I always tell people, is I cold called people out of a phone book and took a lot of rejections. You don't have to do that. But you can slowly and incrementally start building your tolerance to fear by taking smaller and smaller risks, then bigger risks, and bigger risks. Because I can tell you, if you're not overcoming fear, if you're not pushing your comfort zone, you can kiss being an elite player goodbye. You'll never reach the top levels. And this leads into the last thing I want to talk about that everybody who wants to be elite does, and that's launch. Now, this last thing, and this is the most infuriating thing. If I can get people to do this one thing, I tell you there'd be so many more people living the life they want, there'd be so many more entrepreneurs, there'd be so many more people who live their life with passion and weren't sitting around talking about it. And what is it? What am I talking about? What is this one thing that can literally change everything if you just did this one thing? I'm talking about launch. Launching. This is the sixth thing I'm gonna talk about, launching. Most people who are entrepreneurs, they're just so fucking scared to launch. They won't get out there. They won't put in the effort. They won't do anything. They'll talk about it. I have so many friends around me right now. When I start doing my business, they start seeing me do stuff. And then they'll come to me and they'll start talking about their business ideas, right? They'll talk about these great ideas. And I have some of them, actually some of these things are genius. Some of the best stuff I heard matches the stuff that you see out there in the world today. However, there's one problem. They never get started. Look, most people think that, oh, getting started or getting launched and all this type of stuff, you have to have a certain level of work. So they always tell me, when I get more education, when I get more skills, when I get more people who know me, then I'll launch. But what they don't understand is the best people, the top people, they got out there and launched. I can use myself, for example. How did I start getting people, millionaires and things like that, to take meetings with me? Like one of my first millionaire mentors, Matthew knows, how did we get a meeting from him? It wasn't because we had some type of special skills. It wasn't because we had some type of special abilities. It's because we launched. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any recognition. I didn't have anything. So what did I do? I went out there and I started taking action. I started doing videos. I started doing my services for free. I started putting stuff out there. Then eventually, I created great stuff and I created a body of work. The same thing with willpower. When we went to Matthew Noah's office, he had all this body of work of stuff he had did, pictures of he had done with celebrities and all this type of stuff. We wasn't sitting around saying that, you know, I'll take that meeting when I get better. I'll take that meeting when something comes up. I'll take that meeting when I get more skills. I have people with literally $1 million ideas. And everybody has $1 million ideas, so it's not that groundbreaking. But they just won't launch. They give me all these excuses of why they can't do it, why they're special, why their situation is different. But everybody that I've ever seen has overcome these same excuses that they have. One thing, once you understand, this is something self-development they say all the time. The more personal it is, the more universal it is. I'm going to say that again. The more personal it is, the more universal it is. There's somebody who has beat whatever excuse that you have. While you're sitting around trying to become the person you would be, somehow magically I maybe get this type of connection and maybe hope that somebody will come along and put you on. I'm not looking to get put on. When I'm around these millionaires, when I'm around these celebrities, I'm not hoping they put me on. I'm gonna put in the work. Nobody has to put me on. I'm gonna put in the work and make it happen. That's what entrepreneurship is. And while I've done all this, while I've actually got out here and I created stuff like the Massive Action Starter Guide. I created stuff like the Massive Action Entrepreneurship Product. I just went out there and created great stuff for people to see and people to use. And that was the best thing I could do for my business over everything else. Because now, regardless of what happens, even if I fail at doing those things, I've still created a body of work. I've still created a track record because I got out there and launched. Things are not always great in the beginning. However, if you're willing to just get out there, take action and launch, you can create amazing, next level stuff that just blows people away. But the only way you can be great is launch. To wrap this up, I just want you to remember those 6 points. Look, like I told you before, this is not about average level success. This is people who want to take things to the next level, be a lead. This is for somebody who wants to be at the top of their field, the top of their organization. This is for people who want to be leaders of people hanging on you everywhere, you being the one people come to. I just want you to remember those 6 things. First, nuanced thinking. Don't think of everything black and white, it's this or that. Remember context. Everything has its context. You have to think in more depth. You have to think in more nuanced thinking. It's not something that you're going to traditionally hear in the mainstream, because the mainstream wants things to be either this or that or simple to understand. 2, I want you to remember you have to be able to sustain focus. You have to be able to concentrate and put your mental focus on one thing for a sustained period of time. Next, breaking social conventions. Look, you're going to walk around the world and people are going to tell you what things should be. You're going to live in the world of shoulds, right? This is what you should do. This is what you should do. You have to break out of that world. You have to create your own world where you do the things that you really want that are in your own best interest. Next, you have to put urgency on yourself. You have to have a sense of self-urgency. The society is getting cushy. A lot of times you can have a mediocre existence and nobody's going to tell you to do anything. To get to that next level, you're going to have to push yourself. Beyond that, overcoming fear. Look, we all have fears, we all have doubts, but we have to get out here and make it happen anyway. It's the only way you're ever going to become elite. All the greatest people of all time have overcome their fear. And finally, launching, getting started, going out there, making it happen, build a body of work, and not just sitting back and saying, well, you know, next week I'll start, week after that I'll start. I got friends right now, they told me next week they're going to start, and that was 3 years ago. They never fucking started. That's what this is about. This is what Massive Action is about. We're trying to take you to an elite level. We're trying to get you to the top level. And if you're willing to do the types of things we're talking about, the things we're telling you, you can reach that elite level. There's nothing separating you from the top people in the world except they focus, except they put their head down, except they process the world and essentially do things differently than you're doing them right now. And if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to take that level of action, you can be amongst the tops, greats of all time. I want to thank you for watching this video. I know this was a bit of a long one, but I thought this was an important concept. We really went in today, and I'm very happy to share this with you and get this content out. This has been something that's been on my mind for a long time, because I watch people all the time not reaching their full potential because they just don't want to do the things that are necessary, or they're blaming all kinds of excuses. Nobody gives a shit about your excuses. Nobody cares where you came from. Nobody cares about your background. Nobody cares about any of those things. And if you're an elite player, you have to understand you're going to have to toughen up and deal with the world as it comes to you. Play the hand you've been dealt and take massive action. As usual, like and subscribe for more. I want you to go right now, push that like button, go over there, touch it, slap it, whatever you gotta do to it. Subscribe, join the Massive Action movement. I'll see you next time.